Tri-Brigade is top tier once again, thanks to Spright. Now, granted, this was already top tier, but in the Duelist Cup, it got rank 29. So we're going to talk about it. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're talking about Tri-Brigade Spright, and more specifically, post-Nimble Beaver limitations. Now, we have already done we did previously a talk about the Tri-Brigade Spright before the Nimble Beaver limitation, but now with Nimble Beaver being limited, this is the deck that did the best in the Duelist Cup, which is very funny because Nimble Momonga. You love to see it. It does happen to be a 2, which is pretty nice, and a Beast, which is also pretty nice. So let's quickly do the card by card and the explanation, starting off with, of course, the Tri-Brigades. We have ourselves 2 Nerval. We also have the 2 Karos, triple kit, as well as, at the moment, 2 Fractal, and, of course, 2 Tenki. Now, granted, eventually we'll be able to play 3 Fractal, which will help at least somewhat. Maybe you won't actually play 3 and 2 Tenki, but who knows. But yeah, with the new ban list, Fractal is going to go to 3, so that's pretty nice. But all in all, that's it for the Tri-Brigades. We're also running the 1 Revolt to search off of the Bear Brum, which is pretty nice as well, because it basically gives you insurance as back row in case your opponent deals with like a whole bunch of your monsters. So there's that. Moving on to the Nimbles, we're just running 3. We're running the 1 Angler and basically 2 targets for it, the Beaver as well as the Momonga. But yeah, also Beaver's just a good summon so that you can summon out the Momonga, which is then a, full Spright combo. And then of course we're playing a whole bunch of Sprites. We're playing 2 blue, 1 jet, 2 red, and 2 carrot. Yeah, we have to kind of supplement the rest of our Spright strategy by introducing more of the Sprites, most notably the extra carrot and the extra red. However, they did come up quite a bit where I wanted, more of them, and I mean both of them. So it was nice to have. Then we're running a whole bunch of other hand traps and the like. Oh, sorry. We're also playing the 2 starter and the 1 smasher, obviously. But then we are running a whole bunch of hand traps, the double Veiler, triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom. We also have the 2 called by, the 1 Crossout Designator, triple Infip, and 1 Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial is very good. As for the extra, there's a lot of cards that we are omitting, and more specifically, there's a lot of one-ofs, which is very interesting. So there's that. So we are playing ourselves 1 Mannequin Cat, 1 Gigantic Spright, 1 Almirage, 1 Lightheart, 1 Masquerena, a double Dragon Lord, Oath, a Farigite, a Bear Brum, an Elf, 1 Pit Knight Early, which is a new card, so we're going to talk about this one in particular. Pit Knight Early, when a monster effect is activated that this card points to, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn, changes its attack to 0, and negate its effects. Now, notably, this is a when effect, which means you chain it. Which means if your opponent were to activate something, like for example, they normal summon a monster and activate the effect, let's say an Aluber, you can chain to the activation of that monster something like Elf, right? So say, for example, Elf is here, you have the early, it's like this, right? And the early is pointing to it. You activate the Elf to bring something back. You chain the early, which then allows you to negate the monster effect because it's a when effect. So it's not something that would like chain to, an activation or something, or like, would be a. It's not like the Kashtiras where when they activate, or when a monster effect is activated, it's after the resolution or after the chain that they would activate their effect. It is, hey, you activated an effect that this card points to. Great, now I get to activate my effect, which is pretty cool. Then we have the 1 Sprint, the 1 Rugal, Apollosa, Access Code Talker, and Shureg. So very interesting list here. I normally like to play 2 Shureg, but Access Code is also very strong, and Access Code is also a great out to Makonko boards, which sounds very strange, but turns out being able to pop a whole bunch of cards non-targeting is very strong against Makonko, but just in general. So, there you go. That's it for the list. Let's hop into the duels and show you how this deck performed. Alright, so here we are going second, and one of the advantages that this deck has is the ability to play through Shifter, which is kind of interesting, but the Spright engine does allow you to utilize your Tri-Brigades or your Sprites, either or, to basically play through Shifter. Now, obviously, your deck isn't going to be as good, or your plays aren't going to be as good, but yeah. We're playing against Exo Sister, because of course we are. And, of course, they draw everything. Out comes the Ellis. Yeah, for sure. Why not? Out comes Mika. Yeah, for sure. Why not? Mika effect is going to detach, add the Returnia, and then they are going to set one and pass. So, there's a chance, right? And I draw Kit, which is actually very useful. So we're going to go normal summon Kit, special summon the red, special summon the blue, grab up Carrot, and at this point, my opponent doesn't activate the Returnia, which is a crime, because now we get to go for Mannequin Cat. Now, Mannequin Cat is a very cool card, and since we are not locked into 2s or Tri-Brigades or any of that jazz, we can go and activate the Mannequin Cat. However, my opponent is going to try to attempt the Returnia, to the which I will say, no, Carrot is there. We're going to negate that. We're going to say no to that. That's not allowed. Yes, we do have to get rid of our red, but I don't care, and I'll show you why. We're going to go and bring back the Dimension Shifter. Now, if you don't know, Exo Sister hates when cards that are not Exo Sisters or Xyz are on their field, so, of course, a Dimension Shifter is not a good look for them. And I'm like, that's totally fine, because now we get to special summon from our deck, and they're going to Ash, but luckily, we still have the Crossout Designator, and which... Crossout Designator happens to be the only card that would have actually allowed us to continue playing, or more specifically, allowed us to actually activate the Mannequin Cat here, which is very nice. So, yeah. So we get to banish the Ash Blossom there, and negate the effect. Out comes the Spright Jet. Spright Jet is then going to search out the starter, and then we are going to activate the starter. And I know what you're saying. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? What is the overall plan? To make Pit Knight early. Now, this is kind of weird, but Pit Knight early is the most expendable of the options, and the reason I say this is because Pit Knight early doesn't have a great effect at this point, because we didn't end up making the normal board, right? So Pit Knight early is kind of just like the one that is expendable that allows me to make Gigantic big enough to just walk over the Mika. So yeah, there you go. We're now going to go for the Gigantic here and special summon the Carrot by detaching a Carrot. So yeah, having both red and Carrot is pretty strong. My opponent will then attack over the Dimension Shifter. To the which, we know that they have the Martha in hand. We negated it earlier with an Ash Blossom, and so we knew that that was there. But we're going to negate with the red, and away it goes. To the which my opponent will then activate Triple Tactics Thrust that they drew off of the top. And now I have to negate with Carrot, and just pray that I draw any two. Any two does it, any two does it at this point. So, I just, any two, or access to a two, and that's Fractal. That's full combo. Yeah, we absolutely got this in the bag. My opponent concedes after seeing the Fractal. Very interesting. But yeah, luckily you can play through Shifter. Good game. Alright, and here we are going first, and this is one of the reasons why I prefer this version of the list over something like Live Twin Spright, and you'll see with the end board as to why that is the case. So we're going to go for the Carrot here, and then go for Elf using the Kit, and yeah, this is a pretty standard thing. We're going to go for the Nerval, dumping the, the Kit, dumping the Nerval to go for the Karos here, and then we're going to go into the Gigantic. At this point, my opponent goes for the Bestial Sarnier, and I'm like, that's totally fine. We're going to go for the Jet off of the Gigantic and search out the Smasher. So we now have Starter and Smasher. And I go for the Sprint here, which is a bit interesting. But the Sprint notably gets to go for the Angler, which summons out two of the other two beasts, Beaver and Momonga, which then goes into an early. We can then go for the Karos effect by summoning it off of the Fractal. Go into the Double Dragon, or Ancient Warrior's Oath, with the Karos as well, and then have a Starter and a Smasher. So, notably, what this board actually does is, I mean, it's kind of not a lot, but we have the Pit Knight early as a monster negate. We have the Ancient Warrior's Oath as a bounce. We have a Sprint as a bounce. We have the Elf to bring back things like a red or a, I believe, Carrot, yeah. So we have the red or the Carrot activatable as well. And of course we have a Starter and a Smasher, which is all pretty good. So yeah, my opponent goes for the Lubellion. I'm like, that's totally fine. You can grab up the Druiswarm. They're going to then tribute for the Lubellion, to which I will just bounce to hand so that they can't activate the effect of their Lubellion to grab something like a Bestial Regained, or not Bestial, Branded Regained, which would allow them to gain more cards, which I just don't want. Out comes the Chaos Space, and again, that's totally fine. They're going to pitch the Bestial Lubellion, that's not doing anything. And then they're going to normal summon Black Metal Dragon. Now, there's a few things that I can do here. I choose to go for the Smashers here, so we're going to go for the Smasher. Since we already activated the Sprint, I'm just going to get rid of the Gigantic. It's not really all that useful anymore. And out comes the Druid Swarm. Like, that's totally fine. We're going to go for, or they're going to go for the Chaos Space, putting back a card, draw into the Bestial Baldrike, and I'm like, okay, here I actually do kind of have to do something. So we're going to go for the red to bring it back. They're going to go to the battle phase, and I activate the Ancient Warrior's Oath, and I kind of messed up. I didn't activate the Pit Knight early to put the Baldrike to 0, but we do end up bouncing the the Druid Swarm. Here we're going to go for the red here, and negate it, or not negate, with the starter, we get to go for the red, which is the monster effect negate. My opponent will go for the Collapse Serpent and the Striker Dragon. I'm like, that's totally fine. They're going to grab up a whole bunch of cards, and then just link off into the Romulus. Yeah, no, not happening. Pit Knight early. Luckily, I still had the Pit Knight early to negate the effect here, which is pretty nice. And actually, it turned out this was probably the better play instead of negating with the Ancient Warrior's Oath. So, there's that. They're going to go for the Rocket Tracer effect, to which I will negate and destroy, and then they're just going to special summon the Wyvern Rusher that they had in hand to go for Hieratic Seal and pass. At this point, again, I don't really care. Like, again, we have the ability to red negate. So we're just going to go for the Elf here and bring back the kit, and then just link off into Apollousa. The reason for this is because I think we also know that there is a Magnemite in hand, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's the Druid Swarm in hand. So we know the Druid Swarm, we also know that Hieratic Seal. So putting out 2 monster negates in particular, the red and the Apollousa, means that neither of those can activate. And if the Hieratic Seal does activate, we have the negate, or the multiple negates to even negate the summon. So at this point, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. 2 lethal. So we're going to go for the kit here. We're going to banish 4 and go for the Shureg. Shureg effect will activate it. They are going to activate the effect of the Hieratic Seal, to which we will negate. We're going to banish their field spell. Then we're going to negate the summon as well, and then link off into a Ferrigite. Ferrigite can then special summon this Kairos. Since we didn't activate the Ferrigite earlier, we now have the ability to do that here. And my opponent can see is realizing, oh, that Druid Swarm in hand isn't going to do anything, and we have well over lethal. We could also go for the 4 material, or the link 4 access code, which is also very strong there. So yeah, good game. All right, here we are once again going second, and that's the one of baby Nimble Beaver. We also see Burial, which isn't great, but my opponent is playing Pearly, so well, let's see what we can do. They go for the Delicious Memory here, and then I think they just genuinely forget that Delicious Memory requires a monster on their field, so they have to set a card. Yeah, a bit silly, but okay. They pitched the Imperm to go for the Purrlily. Purrlily will grab up the Yeep, which is kind of odd, but they're going to attach, go for the Plump, and activate the Plump effect, targeting 1, set 2, and pass. I'm sure a lot of Purrly players are very upset about this, and the way that this person played, but that's okay. Because honestly, it's not about this. It's more so to show you a very funny duel. Out comes the Maxi, and I'm like, cool, that's awesome, cross out Designator anyway. So no Maxi, no interaction there, but we do go for the Nimble Momonga. Now they actually do something pretty smart here. They go for the Yeep. We already know that they have the Yeep. I believe they searched it off of the Purrly, or the Purrlily, and we have 2/2s, and we've already used our normal summon. Sadly for my opponent, we do have the Foolish Burial, but this is actually a pretty decent play. So they're going to go for the Noir here. They are going to shuffle away the Beaver. They're going to shuffle away the Momonga, and leave us with no 2s. Here we just go for the Dimensional, or for the Fusion Foolish Burial. Holy crap, I can't talk. We go for the Fusion. This card, whatever the fuck this card is. Oh my gosh, I cannot speak. And I actually sent Kit instead of sending an Angler. Maybe it was a mistake, but I knew that I already had the... if I send a Nerval, we get the Kairos. Kairos can then special summon itself, and then we have the red, and etc., etc. So I think grabbing the Tri-Brigade here is also a reasonable send. So we're going to send the Nerval. Nerval will grab the Kairos. Kairos will pitch the second Nerval to go for the Kairos, and then we're going to banish 2 after special summoning the red to go for the Ferrigite. Ferrigite will special summon the Kit, and then we can go for Sprind. And Sprind, guess what? Can send Angler, because of course it can, because they shuffled back my 2 monsters. So those 2 are now in the deck. And, yeah, good game. I'm just chain blocking there. With the Ferrigite, we're going to have to put this card back anyway. But Very funny. And that was actually a pretty intelligent play from my opponent. If I didn't draw the one of, that would have been the best play. So I don't blame them. Good game. All right, we're back with the deck, and Nimble Momonga is topping in 2023. Who would have seen that coming? But in all honesty, I do think that this is a pretty decent deck. I think it is a little bit slept on, and I do believe that Spright is still very strong. I don't think it's nearly as strong outside of the Duelist Cup, though, because I think in the Duelist Cup, it's very important to play a simple deck, a deck that does the same thing consistently, can go first and go second, and more specifically than any of that is easy. Is easy to play, right? It's easy to get wins, but both going first and going second, and like you don't really have to think about, because basically Konami says it's not about how well you play, it's not about the skill level at which you play. In the Duelist Cup, in order to go to Worlds, you need to play the maximum amount of games. That's basically it. So it is not about skill or any of that other stuff that I mentioned. It's about grinding out games for 3 days. For 3 days, right? On like 30 minutes of sleep, you gotta play very well. Which means, if you are playing really well, you probably have to play a simpler deck. Now, granted, Pearly was the most represented deck in the top 100 of the Duelist Cup, and that's pretty self-explanatory. However, it is by far the best deck, so it does make sense as to why it saw so much play. And on top of that, it's actually not as complicated once you learn the basics, right? Once you learn the basics and you do the basic combos, especially with the Ghost Trick stuff, it's a lot simpler, right? The Ghost Trick stuff also just, like, simplifies it. So, there's that. How does this deck do in the ladder? Honestly, it's still pretty good. Spright is still a deck that needs to be respected, and maybe not everyone is. Its end boards are quite phenomenal, as well as just being able to play multiple hand traps means that sometimes you just interrupt your opponent with, you know, multiple hand traps. That's kind of it. I don't really have anything else to say other than this deck's still good. What a crazy concept. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much so appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.